Well, so they were always going to fair market value that deal. I mean, so that's not really a revelation. Any deal of that nature where you transfer an asset internally would have to be at fair market value under the associated party rules. So the Premier League was always going to have to approve it. The difficulty the Premier League are going to have is how you value Chelsea women's team, because there are a few comparable transactions that are out there. One that Chelsea will definitely point to is the recent sale of Angel City to the owners, sorry, the CEO of Disney, um, in a personal perspective, and that was sold, I think, for from memory, $250 million. Um, but it's quite a unique asset. Angel City is an LA-based women's football team with a bit more revenue than Chelsea women's, but not very substantially more. And to value women's football teams at very, very high values can't really be done on the basis of their revenues. So if you look at Chelsea women are doing less than £10 million revenue. So clearly it doesn't have a value of $200 million or £200 million on the basis of those revenues. It's very much about its future potential value. So very hard for the league to value it. I think a lot of clubs are going to be protesting if it was approved at a very high value. We don't know how far short Chelsea were from a PSR perspective, but it seems to most people who've looked at the numbers, including myself, that they were in excess of 100 million short, even after all of their transfer dealings, which needs to be filled either by property transactions or deals like the Chelsea women's team, or other. There may be other things that they've done that's not clear. We don't know yet until we see the accounts. But the sale of other assets, either internally or externally, but they've tended to be internally. Um, so look, I think the Premier League are going to have an issue because they've got a difficult thing to deal with from a fair market value, and it's going to be a controversial situation if, for consecutive years, Chelsea ostensibly fail PSR at a headline, but make up any breach by selling assets in essence to themselves. That's going to be very controversial in the context of other teams not doing that, failing, and getting very big points deductions. Because of course we have the Everton case on accounting detail, which is coming up on capitalisation. So we'll see what happens there. That if that went against Everton, that would be a points deduction, probably quite a small points deduction on top of what they've already had. But the big issue is that it would then go into the calculation for future years for Everton. And so they would continue to find it harder to pass PSR, say for the season just gone. You've had Nottingham Forest, who have had the PSR issues. You've had other teams like Newcastle who have had to scurry around on the 30th of June to comply, do deals that probably they would say that they didn't want to do, and then you could have a situation where, contrasted with that, Chelsea were permitted on a PSR basis to have passed by selling assets within their group. That's clearly going to cause a lot of controversy within boardrooms all around the country. And then there's also the United situation with the numbers that came out this week, um, in which, on the face of it, United for the season just gone will have failed PSR as well, unless they are permitted to have certain allowances added back. And those things that are going to be allowed back are COVID related, which seems surprising given that one of the years that we're looking at is 2022. But also, it appears the costs of doing the recent investment from Ratcliffe. and the sale process. And again, those are going to be controversial issues across the boardrooms, particularly clubs that have been in PSR difficulties themselves and have done deals that they would say they wouldn't have done if they could have avoided them. So it's going to be an interesting few months, I think, for the Premier League. This PSR situation is not yet done, and we'll have to see how they deal with it. They definitely are not going to want a situation where there is a perception that the smaller clubs, as Richard Masters called them in Parliament, where the smaller clubs get punished for PSR breaches, and the bigger clubs are effectively allowed to do deals that are questionable, and those things go through. So we'll have to wait and see. There's, as I say, big issues for the Premier League to deal with from a regulation perspective this season on PSR.
So another controversy that emerged around Chelsea this week was the Enzo Fernandez video where he was involved in a discriminatory song with Argentina after their Copa America win. There are some suggestions that maybe that could pose problems for Chelsea landing a shirt sponsor deal next season. Do you think that could be an issue?
No, I think it's unlikely to be a particular issue from a commercial perspective. I mean, clubs have dealt with these sorts of situations over time. It's one individual player. I think it's unlikely to sully Chelsea Football Club more than the player himself. So I think it's a player issue rather than a club issue. But they've got the challenge anyway in terms of shirt sponsor. I mean, shirt sponsors should be done relatively early in the year, certainly by the end of March, because you have a whole printing cycle for the shirts coming out of the Far East, and where clubs don't have sponsors agreed for the forthcoming season, you end up missing the window of getting those shirts printed. And the shirts that are in there now, as per last season as well, with Chelsea, they're being sold without a front of shirt sponsor. Now, the fans, I think, quite like being able to buy shirts without a front of shirt sponsor, but from a commercial perspective, it's a 40-50 million pound hole per season to not have the sponsor in place. Last season they had Infinite Athlete, who appeared to have been an associated party again, so that had to go through a fair value assessment. We don't know exactly what value that was, although they talk about it as £40 million. We understand that this year they've not been able to either get it through as an associated party transaction, or they've not tried. The deals that they have tried to do, they don't seem to be able to get at close to £40 million. So they're already on the back foot in respect of the front of shirt. They've got a big decision to make as to whether they cave in now, take whatever they can get, maybe 20-30 million pounds, or try and hold out for a multi-year deal beyond the season, perhaps on the back of a very strong start. But it's a big issue for them, because in a year where they've got no Champions League again, and where for the last 3 years they've lost over £200 million at the operating level, they haven't got space to have a 30 to 40 million pound hole in the profit and loss for the front of shirt not being taken. So it's just another one of these issues that Chelsea need to deal with.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.